back into Spanish and learn a little bit more about our great faith. We also have Mass in Spanish at 7:15 on Saturdays, 7:15 p.m. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to bring up the mastermind behind tonight's meeting, and she's going to introduce our guest speakers tonight. Most of y'all know her, and she was our coordinator last semester, and she's still very much involved in leadership and Festivales and does a lot for our students. Ana Sofia?
Well, that job should go to the Holy Spirit, because he really is the mastermind of everything. So every year, St. Mary's has an annual social justice week, so that we can reflect on the reality of our world, because our Lord came to save souls, but he's also a Lord of justice, and so we hope that tonight we can see a little bit of what he has to say. I want to invite you all to close your eyes for a second. Come, Holy Spirit. Come, Holy Spirit. I invite you to think for a second on the word of hunger. What does it mean to be hungry? What does it mean not to have anything to eat? What is abundance? In those days, when there again was a great crowd, without anything to eat, he summoned the disciples and said, "My heart is moved with pity for the crowd, because they have been with me now for 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them away hungry to their homes, they will collapse on the way, and some of them have come a great distance." His disciples answered him, "Where can anyone get enough bread to satisfy them here in this deserted place?" Still he asked them, "How many loaves do you have?" 7, they replied. He ordered the crowd to sit down on the ground. Then taking the 7 loaves, he gave thanks, broke them, and gave them to his disciples to distribute. And they distributed them to the crowd. They also had a few fish. He said the blessing over them and ordered them distributed also. They ate and were satisfied. They picked up the fragments left over, 7 baskets. There were about 4,000 people. So we ask you, God, that you would open up our hearts to see the people and the compassion that you saw these 4,000 people. You know your ways and your thoughts are higher than us, and so we ask that you would help us see our fellow brothers and sisters as you see them. You would move our hearts not just with sentimentality, but that you would truly teach us your compassion. And give us the courage and the faith to remember that when you ask us, it doesn't matter if we have enough bread or enough fish for everybody, because you will do the rest of the work and you give you what we have. So teach us your compassion, Lord. And we thank you for all the blessings we have. And we ask that you would show our hearts. Would you truly invite us? And you invite us to share everything we have with those who don't have. And we ask this to Christ our Lord. So I want to invite our 2 guest speakers tonight. We have the mother of a lovely little boy, Stephanie Kirst. She has worked in several development projects for food security with the Warlock Institute. She is one of this generation's hunger fighters. And Dr. Wingenbach, he is also a hunger fighter who was a former volunteer of the Peace Corps in villages of Guatemala. And they both have collaborated in social justice issues, education, and in different development projects in underdeveloped nations around the world. And so we thank them tonight for coming, and well, I look forward to them.
Hola. ¿No es en español?
Hola.
¿Sí? Say howdy. Howdy. This activity tonight was created. I knew nothing about it until I met this wonderful young person. But before we get to tonight's activity, Anna Sophia, I get it now. She has helped me think more deeply about my own spiritual journey. Yes, I'm a professor here, but I'm Gary to you. And he knew that if he sent them away, they would collapse on the way home to get nourishment, right? That's what you said. It's not about that food, is it? He knew that if they left him and walked alone, they collapsed spiritually. That's a whole nother topic, a whole nother night. We have to talk about that sometime, right? That's not about food. That's the real message there. I get it. Thank you, Anna Sophia. I'm known for going off on my tangents. When you get something, you have to share it. You just have to share it. So, hunger. What is hunger, right? I mean, certainly this group, I can feel it, that this group gets together, not necessarily to talk about food, although that's a good thing. But there's a greater hunger here. And I think that recognizing that greater hunger, maybe that search for the truth, as Sophia likes to say, there's the truth, just seeking the truth. There's one truth. That along that journey, when you're seeking the truth, the word, the way, the light, your body needs nourishment. And so that's what we want to think about tonight. Just for a moment, just for a few brief moments tonight, because not all of us, certainly not all of us across the world, have the same opportunity, the same balance of life's blessings, right, or life's challenges. And I think we're all very blessed, those in attendance here tonight. We are extremely blessed compared to other places on earth. Anna Sophia knows, just 10 days ago, we were in the mountains of Guatemala, and we saw challenges, real fierce challenges to one's hunger, both spiritual and physical. So let's share some thoughts tonight about the hunger banquet.
So as we get started, we wanted to have the opportunity just to have an eye-opening experience. I think the setting has really been set for tonight to think about how we can challenge ourselves to do good in the world, to do justice, and we'll get into some of that later on today. But for all of you, just to think about our wide world. I think a lot of times we get in a bubble here at Texas A&M and the Bryan College Station community. But tonight we're going to open our eyes to the real world. And we talked a lot with Anna Sophia about the real world. What does it look like? And what are the challenges out there that Gary mentioned? So as you think about this real world, what comes to mind? What do you think about when you think of hunger and food insecurity? And this is really open. We're not going to, it's not like a class. We have done this in class, but we want this to be really flexible and fun, and we want you guys to gain a lot from this as well. So feel free to speak up. You don't have to raise your hand or anything. But what comes to mind?
Poverty.
Poverty. Africa.
People dying. People dying. Third world country. Ignorance. Great. Malnutrition. Corruption. Yes.
Injustice.
Injustice.
Helplessness.
Hopelessness. Wars. Very good. lack of education. Think about those two words, food insecurity. Focus on just that for a second. What does that mean?
You don't know where the next meal is coming from.
Uncertainty of food supply.
I said they don't know where their next meal is coming from.
Okay, so that uncertainty. What else? Safe? How safe is the food? That's, yeah. Yes.
Going to school and not knowing who will have food tomorrow away from you.
Right. Going to sleep hungry, or as a parent not knowing if you have food for the children.
And to that, I can say I have a 20-month-old, and having a son, or a child in general, completely changes your perspective on everything. You start thinking, I would think before and think in a family perspective, oh, how am I going to provide for myself? And then you do start thinking about your family, and the dynamic changes. And so you think a lot about these subjects that have come up, and you think about different countries around the world that do have hunger and families that represent those countries. So.
Yeah, especially, we talk a lot about the first 1,000 days being so important, and that's from day one, conception, to the first 1,000 days for brain growth. So brain development, muscle mass, bone development. It's so important to have that balance of different nutrients. And so, trust me, I was young once, I've been there. I know what a ramen diet, a mac and cheese diet consists of. Oh, okay, well, some of us still eat. But having that little boy running around, even though he might be satisfied with ramen or cheese and mac and cheese all the time, that as a mother, you can't have proper growth and development for that. So I want to talk about that and work with a couple of specific definitions. We heard some great words here, but really looking at it from just a couple of different common definitions that we use in the fight against hunger and food insecurity. So hunger, our body's way of signaling that we need something specific. So Guatemala, I don't know, about day 8 of tortillas, mostly just tortillas, and I love tortillas. My body is screaming, you need protein now, in the animal form, hiking up the mountains, it's just one egg, that's all that's in, just one egg. My body was screaming out. So malnutrition is a very important topic because we have it existing in third world countries, and we have it existing in this country, we have it existing in this town. And we can even talk about having too much of one food and being malnourished, okay? So we want to think about that. Food insecure, so there we have access to food, adequacy of food, maybe lacking money, resources. We heard this, several people not knowing where that next meal is coming from. And that's a very tough situation. What does it look like? So what does hunger look like? Can anybody conjure up in your mind, this is what hunger looks like? I heard somebody here say Africa, right? But there's, if you have to envision it, what does it look like specifically? Do you have something in mind? Is it specific to a gender, man, woman, maybe age, old age, or children? I think we all have a fixed image in our mind. Keep that image, okay? Because we're going to help you realize maybe a very specific image with our activity. So let's start. Let's, what? I'm gonna start right on this row here. So in this bucket is a roll. We're each gonna pick a real word roll. We are going to figure out where we rank. So shuffle your fingers around there. Just pick one card. Just one card. And you will see that eventually, get your card, go ahead and start reading through that roll.
And so what we're going to do tonight, as Gary mentioned, you're picking your role in the real world. So tonight we're going to have a dinner representative of dinners across the world, obviously, with time zones. Not everyone's going to dinner at this time. But what a dinner would look like if our room in here represented the world. So pick your cards. Take a couple minutes once you get them. Read who you are, what your new life is for the next hour or so, and kind of think about what it means. What would it mean to be that person in that profession, in that part of the world, just in that situation in general. And then once we get everything distributed, we'll break up and start our meal.
Now, the idea with this exercise is that we have an approximation of the representation for the world's population by income strata. Because that often is the determining factor on food availability, access to food. And not just that, access to credit, right? Access to education. We know from our research that better education leads to a better life or more opportunities. So one of the things we want to talk about are some of the limiting factors within the role of hunger and how we can work together. No more? No, we have plenty. Everybody can have one. Don't worry. Does everyone have one? Excellent. Everyone's ready to participate.
So take a look at your roles. You'll see that there are blue cards that say low income. I think pink cards that say middle income, and yellow cards that say high income. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to take a couple of minutes. We're going to split up into different parts of the room, and you'll be served or serve yourself your meal for representative of that area or income. So our low income recipients will be in this corner over here. Put your chairs off to the side. And then our middle income, you'll receive your meal over here, and you can keep your chairs. The yellow cards will come right up here to this table for your meal. So please enjoy your
Yeah. Just get middle income. We're going to be in a circle. Kind of just in a small.
Okay, Just a couple of notes as you get started with your meal. So the low income is sitting on the floor, and everything is safe. So we just want to make a note, so you might see some dirty looking water, but it is safe. So I'm not going to make you sick tonight. And so what you're eating over here in our low income group is half a cup of rice. And I'm going to spill the red cup. Just one second. So we have some pictures of this, but this red cup is representative of one full meal for a day. And so this is what, in a lot of developing countries who are on food aid and food assistance, one meal for an entire day this is what they would receive. So tonight you guys will receive half a cup of rice. So for one meal. And you'll be eating with your fingers. We do have hand sanitizer, even though that's not typically available. We decided to give it to you guys. So think about that. We'll see some pictures and talk a lot about how much you're eating and how full you are, how satisfying it is.
We also want to point out that within low-income countries, typically there are two types of food that we have access to. Farm-grown or locally produced, but a whole lot more that is food produced. So if we really wanted to express this exercise in the then we would have some nutritious little biscuits here that would taste kind of like cardboard, but they're very nutritious. That is really all you get to. So please come through the line, get your rice, get your drink. Stephanie, let's hear what the middle income.
So for our middle income people, you guys will be sitting in chairs. We don't have tables. You do get a little bit more comfort, a little bit more luxury. And you guys will be eating, this is self-serve, so you won't be served. But we have sandwiches, chips, some fruits and vegetables, and cookies. So you'll see a lot of process. Kind of moving into the middle income strata, they have more money to spend on foods, and so you'll see that they're eating more processed foods. So this is a self-serve. Feel free to get seconds, help yourself, get full, enjoy your sandwiches.
Then finally, at the high income, let me get that for you. Please note, at the high income, represented by about 6 to 7% of the world's population, and really the middle income was only about 13%, giving us about 60% overall of the world's population would be, low income. We have more of a scattering on middle, lower, middle, upper, but then high income typically worldwide about 7-8%. They tonight are at a dining table. They have a server. They have various drinks. As you can see, salads, meat entree, dessert, I believe, is also in the offering. And so please enjoy a banquet. Enjoy your banquet. And enjoy your banquet.
And I just want to make a note that whoever prepared the meal over here, I would like to give me some cooking lessons because it looks fantastic.
Yeah. I definitely. Buen provecho.
Mira la cámara.
Share with the friends around you your home, who you are.
The napkin goes in your lap, just so you know. That one. Yes. We're supposed to have two. Una pa' aquí y una pa' aquí.
Sorry, you can't do that.
So middle income, you all were supposed to have varieties of drinks, but the server maybe forgot to bring them. So just so you know, you should be having the option of drinks. Just so you know. So it's my fault.
And typically, we've done this, we have soda, so like a Fanta, a different flavor of Fanta.
You all had tea and you all had punch. So just imagine you're drinking punch. So forgive me for not bringing your tea. So if you all want to face the speakers.
So, keep eating your banquet, keep enjoying your banquet. And I know, well, you're not supposed to see that. So we just noticed an interesting dynamic. There was a lot of chatting going on, right? And was talking and sharing, and it's not about the rice, although I'm sure it's good. I'm sure it's very good. It wasn't about the rice. Then over here, just heard they're kind of milling about. I said, Sophia, they know each other, right? They're not strangers. And then over here, we just heard clicking up. That's okay. That's okay. That's a good thing. Please continue. You have to play your role. We've all watched a TV show. We all envision ourselves somewhere on the TV, right? Now's your chance. This is your warm-up to play your role. So, we know that hunger and food security, they look differently, right? And we know that hunger is not just food, because already we've seen over here, it's not about the food. So maybe hunger for human interaction, right? the need to belong. Certainly this group comes together more often than just tonight. I can tell that. So that hunger for belonging and that willingness to get together because you're seeking something greater. I think that's really important. That's powerful. I like that. Anna Sophia and I, we not argue, but we debate all the time. She says to me, the hunger, you must seek the truth, and that's all that matters. I said, yeah, but I'm getting hungry along the way while I'm seeking. And no matter how much I want to be more spiritual, if I don't take care of my nutritional needs, that'll be bad. And we can have too much, or we can have not enough. Opportunity keeps us from getting our needs met, the needs of hunger, physical or spiritual. And we want you to know also, Stephanie did a fantastic job putting these slides here. Hunger is not specifically confined to a race or a gender or an age. I think that's really important. And I know some of you have looked at your cards and you've read them. And so we definitely want to be cognizant about what those specific roles are as well. Let's see here. Race and ethnicity. So think about, we even made it worse, right? Not worse, maybe better, I don't know. But here, at least there's plates, but they're still sitting. Oh, that was. Wow. I know some of you were maybe convinced to come here and join under a ruse. Yes. You heard the word banquet? Banquet. I'm going to a banquet. We're going to talk about hunger. Was anybody feeling that? No? Everybody knew? You've all been participated in this before? No? So, did you know you were going to get a meal? You didn't know? Okay. So, good. We have one person. We have two. Yes, we have two. Okay, so different impressions about the word food, banquet, definitely different attitudes also. I know there's people in here who come from farm families, right? Where you've raised food just this weekend. Yes, I got, it's going to be an awesome year for salsa, the kind you eat. Maybe you have I don't know, but I got all my tomatoes and chilies planted this year.
I'm going to go back to the other slide and just make a brief comment about this slide as well. We put this one in here because it has women and children. And for those of you who are familiar with agriculture, it's typically the women and children who spend the most of the time in the fields. And so I think it's an added pressure and something to think about the constraints on a family when the woman is in the field with a baby strapped on the back. And I'm sure Anna Sophia, you guys saw that in Guatemala just last week. Very common. And not a typical field of what you think of for those of you who grew up in farming families, especially in the United States. So you can see it's very desolate and not what you think of when you think of traditional agriculture here.
And I'm glad you pointed this out also because here is the typical food, the basic grain most commonly seen throughout parts of Africa, and that is millet, full millet. And so this, in all reality, yes, many people tonight are having a banquet just with rice, but there's probably even more who are just having millet. And millet, in most forms in food aid situations, the red cup, hold up the red cup back there, please. The red cup. In a food aid distribution, take a look at that. That is a full day serving. And typically it is in the form of porridge, which is from milled pearl millet that has some water or maybe a little milk added to it. And it's more like a gruel, like here in the South they would call grits, I believe. But anyway, pearl millet in many parts of Africa, in Namibia last year I participated in a demonstration where we ground millet and then it's made into almost like a patty that is cooked on a stone next to the fire, and it's denser than a tortilla and it's really gritty. And you learn very quickly that you cannot chew it because the sand that's included with the millet will file your teeth off within a couple of years. And so you simply take a bit and you melt it on your tongue. You let it melt. So if you're really hungry, imagine that. Putting something on your tongue, even though you're desperately hungry and you're just waiting for it to melt. You mash it around in your tongue. That could be especially cruel, I think. So, yes, food security, hunger, it exists in all forms. It exists in many parts of the world tonight through some food distribution points. And let's talk for just a sec. So, can we live? Can the world survive on what is produced today?
Yes.
Yes, I heard a yes. How is it possible?
We make more than enough for the whole world to eat 3 times over.
Okay.
But because of the corruption in government,
Corruption, distribution systems, yes, very much. What else?
Social policies.
Social policies, food as a tool, as a political tool, yes. Anything else? There's a couple of others that really affect how much we produce and how much is available. Post-harvest loss is a very big one. So we can produce maize, millet, sorghum, rice, and have a quality product. And then within a month, lose it to insects. We can lose it to rats, mice, to mold, mildew, fungus. That's post-harvest loss. So you've already harvested the food, you have it, and loss can be upwards of 20 to 30% of the crop. So think about that. Yes, I can produce enough for my family, but we're only, because we have mice or rats or mold and mildew, we're only going to have food for 10 months because I have no way to secure the food in a safe situation. So post-harvest loss affects it a whole lot. Can we have enough food, the world keep producing enough food for the next billion people that we add to the earth?
Yes.
Yes? How do we do that?
Better distribution. A better distribution.
Distribution, we're going to have to improve from roadways, railways, waterways to get food to the population centers that are going to be growing. What else?
reduce your losses.
Wait a minute, I heard it.
Better storage.
Better storage,
Agriculture.
agriculture, improved agriculture,
Technology.
technology. What's the biggest change that we would have to make?
Reduce your losses.
What?
Reduce your losses.
Reduce waste. It has something to do with what's going on at this table. And please don't look at them. They're enjoying it. But they're entree. What's that entree?
They have meat.
They have meat.
It takes a lot of veggies to raise meat products that we can eat instead.
Grains and forages and water to produce the foodstuffs for the animals, to produce the animals for us. Now, not saying that we all have to go vegetarian or vegan. Tried it for just, I couldn't try it for 4 days and going all the time. No. But more of us would have to give up our consumption of some of the meat products because you can feed so many people with 100 bushels of corn, but you can only feed a few of them with 100 bushels of corn fed to a cow or a chicken that's then used to feed people. See what I'm saying? So more of a basic grains diet would be mandated or would be required by a lot more of humanity. Now, there are a few things that happen with those choices. Meat and milk products are essential for brain growth and development. We have the research to show that societies where meat and milk products have been a mainstay of the diets have progressed faster than other societies where basic grains or less meat and milk products were consumed. So what are some of the diseases, think early childhood to adulthood, what are some of the outcomes of a less than meat and milk diet? When you have just more grains or vegetables. Yes?
Less amino acids to make your globulins.
Good. Which retards.
Sorry, less protein building blocks to help your immune system grow.
Exactly. So that opens up the immune system to diseases such as
All of those. Flu, strep throat,
how, just pick a name off. Okay, we got flu, we've got anemia, malaria, cholera, lots of different kinds of diseases that we become more susceptible to. Now, in particular with youth, there's two primary disease conditions, not necessarily diseases, but conditions that result from food insecurity. What are the two primary ones? Does anyone know? Malnutrition. Malnutrition produces two things. Malnutrition is condition, and we have malnutrition in South Texas, but it's an overabundance of one kind of food or a certain kind of food. And actually, obesity is malnutrition, believe it or not. It's starving to death and being what? Well, yeah, it's, you know this, come on. Stunting and wasting disease are the two primary causes. In Guatemala, we saw a high incidence of stunting. So in the populations that were up in the rural mountain areas where we were at, in particular, forearm growth and femur growth becomes stunted at an early age, and therefore growth is retarded. Wasting is a full skeletal frame, but the muscle mass deteriorates with time, and so you have a wasting away effect. Now, we have some few hunger facts that Stephanie, you got these from
Yes,
World
these are from World Food Program. And we'll briefly run through these, but just a quick note on these. You'll see lots of different statistics and places. We just pulled these from the World Food Program, which does obviously a lot of work around the world in providing food aid and food assistance. The first fact that we found is that hunger is and hunger-related illnesses. So this is anything from diarrhea to stunting and wasting. So a number of different areas, not just hunger itself, is the world's #1 health risk. So kills more people than AIDS, malaria, and TB combined. So very shocking. So you think about some of these diseases that you hear so much about, and so much money and effort is put into eradicating these, and then you have hunger that outnumbers, or hunger-associated illnesses that outnumber all of these. 1 in 7 people in the world tonight will go to bed hungry. So think about that in terms of in this room alone. So that's a lot of people. That's a lot to think about. Who revert back to our definition. So you food insecure and or hungry. So you don't have the means to your food, or you don't know where your next meal will come from. So 1 out of 7 people worldwide, but 1 out of 4 children in the developing world is underweight, and so affected by some of these other issues. And then this is one that I always, it is kind of mind-boggling to put it into perspective, that there are more hungry people in the world than the combined populations of the US, Canada, and the European Union. So that's a lot of people, if you think about that. So just some statistics to think about as we go through some of these other numbers and looking at population numbers in the world, and then right here in our own backyard.
So taking a look at the different levels that you have been assigned or you chose tonight in terms of economic. So we would have a high income, roughly the 10% group in developed countries. Then we also have sort of that mid-income level. So what we have here are the green shaded colors would be considered the countries where you have less than 5% would be very low undernourishment. The yellow countries, where are we at on the yellow here? Is that the-
Brazil.
Oh, these orange ones, 5 to 15% moderately low undernourishment. Orange mean 15 to 25%. Red, 25 to 35% of high undernourishment. So now you can see more of the countries in Africa, Mongolia. And then finally the purple and maroon colored countries, East Africa, southern parts of Africa. You have 35 and higher percentage where you have very high undernourishment. So, yeah, somebody said earlier Africa. When we said, what does hunger look like? You said Africa. That's a large part of it, but there are other places around the world as well. So that's the global view. What about the national view right here? So, we think our country's pretty well off, but realistically, we have food insecure areas here in the US as well. These are counties that are represented on this map. The darker colors, 30% and higher of food insecurity rates. And you can see that, Southern California, Southern Arizona has a lot along the Mississippi River Delta area, and throughout the South, and then deep South Texas has a very high rate of food insecure households. Again, poverty, and then also opportunity has a lot to do with it. You might say, wow, look at that spot. Is anybody familiar with the Dakotas? North Dakota being my home state. What's going on right there?
Reservations?
Yes. Native American reservations. Very high poverty, also along here in Montana and Oregon as well. So poverty is within the U.S. and we definitely have areas of concern all across the U.S. So let's take a look at Texas. There's a lot of Texans in here, right? There's a lot of Texans, yeah. So you can kind of see where, more or less where your county is. El Paso area, East Texas, the Valley, farther on down.
So before we move on, where do you think the Brazos Valley ranks? Without taking a really close look at the coloring of the map, where do you think our county would fall? Yes.
Isn't there like lots of hunger and Ryan? Like, is it one of the poorer areas in like Texas?
It is, sadly. And we're going to take a closer look at the Brazos Valley. So, but I did want to just, yes,
So what is the definition of food insecurity rate? What is that measure of?
where they don't know where their next meal will come from. Is
So they don't.
How's that defined?
What is the measurement? That's
Yeah,
what
what is that?
USDA uses it in terms of like access to resources. And so a lot of the food aid programs, the USDA programs, you have your SNAP and WIC programs, those people who, and correct me if I'm wrong, when they're registered on those programs, they're considered, is that considered?
So is it like a measurement of the people on the program?
Correct.
Okay.
And it also has to do with your income level, your income status. And typically, what they're looking at also is what those families are spending per meal. And you can see here, the national average cost of meal for food insecure households was $2.67 a meal. In Texas, it's $2.28. They're spending even less, or they have even less access to food.
So we noticed in the national map that it was about 16.5% food insecurity. So in Texas, we see it's 18.7. Any guesses what Brazos Valley is before we move on to that slide? 40? We have 40%. Any other guesses?
29.3.
29? 30?
Let's take a look. So this is county. 22% of the county population. These data were from 2012. So just 18 months old. 22%. Shocking? Not shocking?
When they calculate the average cost of a meal, are they calculating it based on 3 meals per day, no matter how small, or are they?
I believe that's the distribution factor that they take into account in terms of the SNAP program or the WIC program. So they would be calculated on, the per meal, per
So
cause.
if they were eating like once a day, but they were spending $7 on it to try to feel fuller throughout, would that be within the about 250 range per meal they're calculating?
I think that the average is what they would say on a balance, how they estimate. So the cost will vary, significantly across the board depending on what you're eating, but I
Yeah, she used the word balanced. Okay. So we know that there's a lot of unbalanced meal choices. Or in other words, there's foods being bought that would not be considered part of a balanced meal. But we wrestled with this in Guatemala as well, okay? The children save up their centavos, their pennies, until they have enough to go to the local store, and what do they buy? There's bananas there. Huh? Candy. Chips, pork bakes. I've never consumed them, but I've heard about flaming hot Cheetos in Texas. Does such a thing exist? It doesn't sound, it sounds great. It doesn't just sound good. But yeah, so now, that's a dilemma you'll have to discuss at a whole nother night. If we have food aid, do you have the right to also say what kind of food aid it is? They got the candy, but do we say, no, you can't have any fun? You must eat the banana? Has anybody eaten cotton candy lately? Yeah. So 22%, 1 out of 5. That's 10,000 Aggies here on campus that would be food insecure. That's 10 of you here tonight. It's a little more sobering, I think, when we start putting this all together. Anna Sophia, maybe you should do this part.
So as we kind of think about, these are some really big numbers and a lot of really heavy stuff to think about, especially if this is the first time that you've been introduced to some of these issues. And we don't bring these up to be sad or to really put a damper on your day when you're excited. And, I know Anne Sophia talked a lot about this being Social Justice Week, but we do talk a lot about these and raise your awareness of these issues, just so you have an idea of what's going on in the world, and not even in the world or in the U.S. or in Texas, but in our own backyard. I know, thinking a lot about what's going on in the Brazos Valley was really shocking to me to think, I live in Bryan and I had no idea that some of this existed and in our area. And so I think it challenges us to really think, what can we do? And I think we're all very fortunate and very blessed to be in the position that we're in and to live in this area and to be at Texas A&M and to have access to resources. But I think the challenge really comes about in thinking of, what difference can I make? And what has God provided to me that how can I help others? So we pulled out just 4 verses. There are obviously lots and lots of verses in the Bible that talk about justice and serving others. But these were 4 that we felt like really kind of encapsulated what we were trying to say tonight about really doing justice. And I know that it can be really overpowering to think about feeding 1 billion people in the world today and thinking about, in 50 years, our population will be close to 10 billion. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, that's astonishing. But we really just challenge you to really think about making a difference in at least one person's life. Helping a kid down the street to, a lot of the work that we do in agricultural development is teaching farmers in different communities how to grow products and what works. And so we just encourage you to think about that as you go on and think about your careers. Think about this week is Social Justice Week, to do good and to use what God has provided to you, to be that vessel and do it lovingly and humbly. So.
And we are really blessed, and we've done a lot of the talking here. But we know that we are surrounded by bright, wonderful young thinkers, future scientists, policymakers,
Saints.
mothers and fathers, maybe some saints. Let us pray about that. But now the students become the masters. Tell us, what can we really learn from this exercise? To be thankful.
To appreciate our resources.
Appreciate our resources.
Be more conscious of what we not eat sometimes. Because some of our plate was really full and not even think about people go out there.
Yeah. That's a big one. Choice.
Also makes you wonder if you really need all this stuff that you have.
It's also like an opportunity for us to learn how to eat well. Sometimes we overeat so many things and that's not good either. Actually, it's good.
Good. Now, you all have that little card. Let's ask for somebody to share what your card says. Go ahead.
So my name is Lutfar. I live in the coast of Bangladesh with my family. We often have floods and sometimes we have cyclones. One year, thousands of people were killed by a tidal wave. After that, Oxfam America funded the construction of a cyclone shelter built by the Bangladesh Rural Advancement Committee. The next time a cyclone hits, we have a safe place to go. For now, we use the cyclone shelter as a school and the committee gathering place.
Thank you. Let's get another one. Go ahead.
Do I have to stand up? No. I am Elizabeth. Years ago, my father grew corn, yams and mung beans on our land in the Philippines. I always thought that one day my children would do the same. Now our land is part of a large sugar plantation, and we cut cane for 35 cents a day. My young son works in the field, but he's very weak because he doesn't get enough to eat. I'll just pray that he'll survive.
Land tenure, land ownership, very real problem.
So another thing that was brought up in that is working for 35 cents a day. And so a lot of this population in our low income lives and survives on less than $1 a day. And I think one of the other statistics Dr. Wingenbach brought up is, in some of our stuff that we were going through and preparing for this, is that 80% of the world's population lives on less than $10 a day. And that's $10 for everything. I mean, that's not just for food, and that's your housing, schooling, education, clothes, etc.
From our biggest group, low income group, you read your role. If you imagined yourself in that situation, did you feel like there's maybe something you could do to change it?
Well, I wish I could have more opportunities.
More opportunities? Anyone else?
Accept what we're given.
Accept what we're given? I'm going to ask for someone from this group to read their role, share with us. Go ahead.
My name is Xiu. I'm 50 years old. I live in Vietnam, where I have been a fisherman my whole life. I have always worked very hard. I get up before the sun rises, load my small boat, and set off as daylight breaks. I'm usually able to catch large amounts of fish to sell to villagers at the local fish market. I make just enough money for my family, a small family.
So, I'm glad you read that one, because you can see there's middle income situations in many parts of the world. And really, income is, and that's not the US standard, that's the World Bank standard, that's the UN standard. How about one from this group? Okay.
I'm Jose. I'm from Mexico. I've gone to private schools all my life, and both my parents are professionals. When I was in high school, my class did volunteer work in the shanty towns surrounding my city. Now I'm in college studying economics. I often think back on my volunteer time. When I finish school, I want to find a way to help people in the shanty towns.
Very good. Now, do any of you have a friend that you got split up by the choices? You have a friend? Yeah? You do? Okay. Where?
Well, Anna's over there.
Can we ask? How does that make you feel? You're split apart from your friend.
She said she hated me when I got my
Not exact words. I said, man, you're so lucky.
Wow. Oh, it's a great word. Very good word, right? Luck. Lucky. Because of a lot of our outcome has to do with some luck, doesn't it? And then, where you're born on this earth, I think, well, I know there's got to be somebody in here from philosophy. We can argue about, no, all the events in time had to arrange themselves just for you to be born where you were in this, right? That's maybe another topic. Beyond this scope. Yeah.
So I have a question, building off of that and thinking about where, our different places and statuses in the world. How did these two groups over here, obviously I saw the faces of you guys over here when they kept bringing food out. You're like, oh my gosh, more food. And, back here it was self-serve for the middle income, and you have access to, I still see cookies and chips and sandwiches back there. Whereas over here, the price is not a whole lot. I'm curious to know, how did you guys feel sitting in chairs, sitting at a table, being served, while you know that your friends and colleagues over here are are eating rice? I mean, how did that make you feel, and did you want to do anything?
I'm comfortable.
Comfortable?
You're comfortable.
I kind of want to get a sandwich, like split it with.
We did that.
We tried, but it was really interesting, like, one half, and it was funny because it almost was like geometricals, but like one half I was willing to take from his plate, and very few people would take from mine.
We were like, should they be doing this?
You're gonna get it for you? Yeah.
There's no rule.
Exactly, that's why I pretty much went ahead and told her, hey, do you want to revolutionize this activity?
We thought we'd mix it up, and
Yeah.
We have to write that in the notes.
Here's the thing, you never set a rule at all. You did say, don't look at them. You never said, don't.
We're gonna hide our
Okay, just for a fun fact that I don't want to take too much time, but my name is Adrian, and I am a former homeless person. Last year, 1 year exactly, I came out of San Francisco and got a job here in Texas. I had 2 months of nothing but this bag, probably 3 changes of clothes, $30 in my name, no income whatsoever, and probably out of them, I had 2 weeks no food straight, up until I found other homeless people who were very, very helpful to me, who showed me the way to find the quote-unquote local food bank, which, well, wasn't much. It was more of a half a cup of soup for only 1 day, but I'm still very grateful that it was something.
That's why you did this.
Yes, and that's one of the reasons why I did this, mainly because, well, just because I climbed up the ladder doesn't mean that I did it by myself. I did it thanks to all the people who I shared those days without any bed, without any shelter. I cannot forgive myself if I don't do anything for them, now that I know where I am. So.
Well, God bless you, man, and thank you for sharing that story. That really kind of brings the exercise home, right there for me. What impacted you in this exercise? That's the first time anybody's ever shared something like that. So, thank you very much, because that's, that is a lot. Sometimes we get overwhelmed. Oh, what can I do? What can I do to fight global hunger? And it was already mentioned. There's things that we can do here locally. There's things that we can do on this campus. As a matter of fact, about 3 years ago, when we first did this in our class, we challenged our students to propose a solution to get involved and to fight hunger. You want to tell them what I didn't even have that clip, but.
So one of the things that came up in our class in the discussion, the students said, there's so much waste at local restaurants. It's astounding how much restaurants throw away. And they said it would be so awesome if we could get restaurants to donate food and to give to the different shelters in town, or to give to different organizations who do help homeless or those who are food insecure. So just this week, so the students talked about it. I think most of them have since graduated. And then just this week, we were reading in KBTX that there is a group of students who is doing just that, and they're working with local restaurants. It's mostly, I think, carbohydrate food. I think Panera Bread and a couple of other restaurants. Sabisa, so which was.
Red Lobster gives away their potatoes. I know from when I was working there.
So really cool to see, that idea and what some students, and probably sparked some conversation with other students as well, to see it into action
If you
right
get
now.
a chance, go to kbtx.com and just search for the Aggies Fighting Hunger, because it was just this past weekend. And I was
We
blown
were
away that.
so excited to see this.
Because this came out of this class and this class that we had on campus, and in particular, this exercise, which is really, that, for us, I think that really says a lot, because that is, that's Aggies taking it out of the campus and off to university, back into society, where, in my humble opinion, that is the greatest gift you have. You have the fortune of being here, interacting with each other, learning new things, becoming educated. We can't keep that to ourselves. We owe it back to society, back to our community, our state, our nation, our world, as a matter of fact. And so,
Countries.
yes, especially other countries. So there's all kinds of different programs and different initiatives as well. They take all kinds of different forms.
I just wanted to share, I had done this exercise before, and when I did it, I was one of the first that low income, and we even had seniors there. I was very shocked last week. I met several people, at least 5 people, who told me that there's times when their families are in such a bad position that all they do is scavenge mountains for herbs, and that's what they'll eat for days and days and days. And sometimes it's so bad that all they'll eat is just salt, because salt is cheaper and it lasts longer. Like, you can buy a bag of salt and it lasts for a while. And that's just the reality that I still can't grasp, because I don't know, I had never met someone who went on just salt for a period of time. And I quickly wanted to share a passage from the Gospel of Luke. This is when John the Baptist is preaching before the baptism of our Lord. And I think that for us, this really guides us into what we should do, and especially seeing what happened in this activity. And it says, the crowds asked him, "What then should we do?" He said to them in reply, "Whoever has 2 clothes should share with the person who has none, and whoever has food should do likewise."
You were in good company with your thoughts, sharing the food. Comments, questions, or other stories?
I think they're doing the hunger banquet. Are you guys doing that again? It's this little thing in the MSC on Wednesday. They're doing this activity. But they're charging $1. I don't know if, because they told me a secret at the end they're gonna give us pizza. So I think it's they're gonna cover pizza at the end, but they're doing the activity, this exact activity.
For social justice.
And I think it's very easy for us. It is very easy for me to meditate and to think about poverty and hunger and need, but it's really hard for us to actually do something. And I just think that Pope Francis is really inviting us, especially in this time. He says to look at the poverty of those who have nothing, to look at it, to touch it, to be one with it, and to actually put all your efforts, just imagine all your efforts focused into really doing something to alleviate the sufferings of other people. And that doesn't just, definitely food. We have desperate cries of hungry people, but we also have desperate cries of lost people as well. And so that's also the invitation of our Holy Father right now, that we take action, that we do something, we don't just hear about it.
So, I ask this to the class normally, and I asked this of Anna Sophia when we met the other day and we were discussing this, and we ask it of you as well. There is always a solution. There is a solution. And we're all capable of doing one thing, probably the most important thing. Every one of us can afford it. What's the first thing we can do? What's the first solution we can do to end hunger?
It's not waste.
Donate? No.
Sure.
I bet you did it today. It doesn't cost anything. Huh?
Pray.
Say that loud.
Pray.
Pray. Yeah. That's the first solution, right? We can be more prayerful about it because through prayer, many of the things that we seek, and we seek the truth, through prayer, we find the answers, we find the solution, we find the way, and we find what we're looking for, which is really important, to keep on going and to keep hope. That's, we can get bogged down. We looked at all this data, and we've talked with students who said, it's just too much, I can't do anything. I'm surrounded by, just too much despair. Don't give up hope. I'm stealing those words. Don't ever, ever, ever give up hope, right? As Coach B's saying. Don't give up hope, but be prayerful. So that's the first solution. But then, work locally and band together and expand out to the next level. And then maybe the next level. And then the international level. Because we can really get to all of those levels, but we have to start within ourselves first, with prayer. And then realize that we have hope, and together we have 2 times the hope. And then together we have 3 times the hope. And we just keep adding until we become a hopeful, prayerful bunch. And I'm looking at a very promising future when I look at your faces. Thank you all for joining us.